Hello and welcome to our program today, Mexican Heritage with Chef René. I'm Becky Greer with the Hillsborough County Public Library. I'm here today with our guest speaker, Chef René. There will be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end of Chef René's talk, so please submit your questions at any time during our program today. Before we get started, I want to invite you all to continue the experience after the program. So here's a few books that relate to our topic. We have A Short History of Mexico by John Patrick McHenry, which have an overview of Mexico from 10,000 BC down to the present day. This is available instantly on Hoopla. You can get that at any time. There's never any wait with Hoopla. And if you're a fan of authentic Mexican cuisine, you can also check out one of our many cookbooks on Libby, Mi Cocina by Rick Martinez. So let me get started by introducing our guest speaker today. Chef René is a local chef and restaurant owner, best known in Tampa as the founder of Taco Bus, although he did sell it about 9 years ago. He has continued with new projects such as Chef René's Mexican Kitchen. He has been featured in the Food Network with Guy Fieri on Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives, also on the Travel Channel in Man vs. Food, and on the Cooking Channel in the Food Nation Show. In his new concept, Chef René's Mexican Kitchen, his cooking has become more intimate and more personal, focusing on great ingredients and interesting cooking techniques found in more modern approaches in the evolution of Mexican food, and using inspiration from his native Monterrey, Mexico. Chef René, the screen is now yours.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction. And then thank you very much for the invite to talk about the subjects today. I'm very excited. These subjects are very dear to my heart. I love history, the history of Mexico, the history of the world, the history of food, of course, is one of my passions, and the migration of foods and the integration into all the way from archaeology and how it keeps evolving. But today, main subject, it has to do with history. And then so we're going to talk about the history of Mexico, and in particular, the independence of Mexico. And this is a very interesting subject, and it's a very important subject. And it's also a subject that is usually misunderstood and also not very well known. And also there's a lot of confusion on all different levels. There's a confusion with Cinco de Mayo, and we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to also talk about why Cinco de Mayo is more popular or is more celebrated in the United States than in Mexico. We're going to talk about the importance of Mexico, of the independence of Mexico, and a lot of the facts that happen in this story that I'm going to tell you that I have put together that is very interesting. But also I have to warn you, today is not going to be the Disney kind of history lesson that you would get from a textbook or from the media, which are versions that are made to either make look good the government or the winners or the countries who participated in these actions, or for easy because they just want to have a TV program and they want to talk about a subject that is very complicated, but they don't want to get into it. They just want to celebrate. They just want a reason to party, which is okay. But for us, for this group of people that I have today in the library, we're not happy with just the subject the way that is that they want to chew it and then give it to us half digested, because usually that's not the way it is. So you're going to have it raw. We're going to go into different perspectives, and not necessarily the ones that the authorities want us to know. So if I was in Catholic school, my version of this video would probably get me kicked out. How do I know? Because I was in Catholic school in my childhood and I was kicked out. apparently the authorities, they don't like it when you call it out that the emperor has no clothing. But it is what it is, and I think it makes history more interesting and more accurate, and the understanding of this history also makes it possible to apply lessons and to understand the world and the human nature that keeps repeating itself, and kind of understand modern things that are happening to this day. And then so I begin with, why are we celebrating? And I have a story to tell, because at one time I'd taken many culinary classes, and I was taking one in which there were people from all over the world. And there was this one guy from Spain. And he asked me in front of everybody, so why do you Mexicans celebrate the independence of Spain? That's the best thing that ever happened to you guys. You were able to modernize these civilizations that didn't even know the wheel, and they were wearing feathers on your head, and you were killing virgins in the pyramids, and we gave you culture, we gave you the cathedrals, we gave you your name, we gave you your name, your last name, and the language. I couldn't believe it. When he told me that, it was like a big slap on my face. And then I said, either you don't know the whole story, or I just couldn't understand, how he could come up with something so rude. To be independent, the independence of Mexico is not just Viva Mexico, now we have a country, which is part of it too. It's like, okay, great, finally we have a country. But colonization was a big tragedy. It was, in many cases, slavery, and many cases, murder, in many cases, rape, in every case, theft, in every case, oppression, in every case, people controlling you. We had this situation in which many people got killed. So when the Spaniards came to America, or all the Europeans, it's been calculated that there were 100 million people in the American continent. 20 of those million people were in the Mexican area. After the independence of Mexico, there were only 2 million people left out of those 20 million Native Americans. I mean, so to get rid of the oppressor is a big deal. It was a big win, and then so we go to what happened and how did it happen, and what it all means. So the first thing is, everybody knows el grito de independencia, or the cry of Miguel Hidalgo. It happened in Dolores, which is a town in Guanajuato. And so that happened in 1810. And so it was this priest, Miguel Hidalgo, who rallied the crowd to go into this war. And so that's what happened. But what really happened also behind all the scenes is it wasn't really a popular uprising as much, because there was so much oppression that really the poor Mexicans, the poor campesinos, the poor farmers, they didn't have the means to do it. But the ones who really started it were the criollos. And the criollos were the second generation of Spaniards who have been born in Mexico. About that time, it was called the New Spain. What happens is that this systematic oppression that the Spaniards brought to Mexico, they even brought it to themselves, because they created all these different classes, and there's like 18 different denominations of which class of Mexican you were. And then, so for example, if you were white, if you were the son or a daughter of a mix between white and an Indian or a Native American, then you're mestizo. But if a black person and a, 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 and that's mulatto. I mean, And then also on, there's 18 different things that you could be. Classist is like racist, but based on class, and the mix with racist, but it's like this control of oppression that was existent in those days with Spain. And then so the upper classes, the people from Spain had their hands also on the Spaniards that have been born in Mexico. And it was an injustice. It was another way of oppressing them, and they didn't like it. And they said, we won't take it anymore. So what would they do to other white people that were rich in Spain? In Mexico. So things like this. So for example, they start developing the wine industry. And Spain says, oh, this wine, it was one of the best wines in the world. And they said, no, this is competition. We want the wine to be a monopoly only from Spain. And they also kill all the olive industry in Mexico. The olive industry never recuperated. The wine industry took years, and there were a couple little niches that kind of survived, but it's not in the Mexican culture to drink wine like it is in Italy or Greek or in the Mediterranean or anywhere in Europe. It couldn't take off. Now it's taking off, and it also has to do with class, because the upper classes want to drink wine. So they want to be seen as white people, as Europeans, as sophisticated. The white collars, I mean, anybody that's a blue collar or is a farmer, or they don't drink wine. They drink beer, which was brought by the Germans to as a business, that it was a better business to sell than pulque and tequila or any of that. That's very populous. But wine is sophisticated, it's expensive, and it's difficult to understand, and it just doesn't, it's just gonna give you that class. And Mexico is still to this day very classist. And then so you see it even to this day, that there's all those traces, even though we got rid of the independence, a lot of the roots of those systems are still there. If you see, very sadly, many of the big advertisements for Coke or Colgate or for a supermarket or anything local, that you would see pictures of white people enjoying a Coke. You will never see someone dark. Or shampoo or anything. I mean, you just keep seeing it again and again. And then so that's what happened. So I mean, going back to this guy who said, well, we got rid of this horrible system that you had, this religion in which you had virgins killed at the pyramids. I said, oh, okay, no, you're right. So there were thousands of nations. Mexico wasn't just one nation. It was like thousands of little towns and different tribes and ethnicities. And some of the bigger ones, not all of them, but some of them had human sacrifices. It's true, the Mayans and the Aztecs. But oh wait, here come the white men from Europe, white men with a beard, who brought with them a guy who was also a white man with a beard. And if you don't happen to like it, we will burn you at the stake. And they burned a lot of people on the stake. They came with that religion, and they propagated the religion, not with love, but with the sword. And many people who didn't convert, they were killed. And then later, even Jews were killed that way. And then that's another topic that perhaps we can talk about a little bit later in this program. Jews that were escaping the same treatment in Spain, then came to Mexico, and then only to find it again here, that there was already the Catholic Church here. And then they went into the Santa Inquisición, or the Inquisition, that was called the Holy Inquisition. But anyways, and then so there's one story that I like to share with you that has made an impact in me, that I can never get out of my mind. And it's this story of these conquistadors that were going after these towns, converting and subjugating these Indian towns. And if they found any resistance, they would kill everybody in that town and burn it to the ground, which is nothing new, like Mongolians or whatever. But the difference is that in this story, they kill every man and woman and older people and the children too, which they did that many times. But in this occasion, before they killed the children, they got them all together and they baptized each one of them. So when they killed them, their souls could go to heaven. True story. So now tell me again about the virgins. Okay. I don't see it. Of course, the defense is, oh, well, they were not true Christians, in which now we can go into the logic fallacy of not a true Scotsman. That's the name of that excuse. And then, okay, but even in that case, well, Christianity has evolved and we have learned and we don't do that anymore. Okay, well, maybe the Aztecs would have also evolved and not do that anymore. And actually they have, because we still have millions of people who speak Nahuatl from that region of the Aztecs, and people from the Mayans who still speak Mayans. I'm not sure if there's millions, but I know there's hundreds of thousands of people, and there's still hundreds of thousands of people of all other ethnicities that have survived. None of them killed virgins. None of them. They have evolved too, but so there's this way of doing it. And there's all this other other justification in which they said, you know what? Why are you complaining about? You're better off now after this conquest than you were before. And there's several examples that also can apply to it. For example, in Britain, the Romans were there to colonize it, and they point out that after the Romans left, the Britons were better off because they have more culture, they knew how to build bridges and roads, and they learned many subjects in culture and arts, and also it was a more coherent society and all of that. But that argument, none of the people that were raped, none of the people that were enslaved, none of the people that were captured and sent as slaves to Rome, none of the people that were murdered of the parents or the relatives of their murderers would think that was a good bargain. It's almost like saying, okay, we know the rape is bad. You know, you tell someone, I know the rape was bad for you. We don't approve of it. It was bad, but look at this. In the bright side, you had a beautiful kid, and you love this kid to death. You would have never had it if it wasn't for the rape. So you're better off. It's like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, but I didn't want it that way. So it could have happened a different way. You can look at examples of countries that were not colonized, like Japan or China or Korea, and they're doing fine. They don't need your cathedrals. They didn't need your language. They didn't need your last name. They're fine. I mean, as you can see, there is some resentment that I'm conveying to you, but it's very complicated. This history is very complicated because I don't know any Mexican who doesn't love Spain or who doesn't love Spaniards. We love them. We love them as people. I mean, this happened so many years ago. This is a new generation. It makes no sense to have any resentments. However, there's something, you know, when you go to the museums, people are like, or on you know, like, so there's like that, but it's hard to focus on where you're going to take it. The other part of it is, of course, is that I don't like it. I hate it. I think it's hurtful, but I'm white. Half of my ancestry is from France, and the other half is from somewhere Spain and Portugal. And now only recently I find out that I have a very small part of me that is Indian or native Indians from the very specific area of the northern Mexico, where is my father from Sonora, from the Yaquis and all those ethnicities. They could trace that, and that was one of those ancestors. No, that was one of those new services where you send a sample of blood, and then they tell you that your DNA. And it was my sister who did it. So I don't know exactly how it went, but they were able to trace to see where my ancestors were from. And it's very surprising, because as we were growing up, they always told us, marry fair, don't marry any of the dark people, because it was it, because after the conquest, after the independence of Mexico, yes, it was a big deal, but there was still some of those underlines, and there was still some of those things that stayed as an institution. So now it was a very positive thing for sure, but but we still have to deal with some of those things that are more than slavery. Actually, slavery was one of those things that we were able to get rid of with the independence of Mexico, because after the independence of Mexico, um, very quickly after the independence of Mexico, so so the independence of Mexico in 1810, it was the cry of Miguel Hidalgo, but that's not when the independence happened. The independence, well, I mean, that's the day that we celebrated. That's when the rally happened. It took another 11 years of wars with Spain, different conflicts. And then finally in 1821 is when we had the treaty of the Cordoba that was that were finally independent. And then 3 years later, we were able to have the first law that said it is prohibited in Mexico to sell or to purchase human beings, and all children, when they reach the age of 14, they had to be free. And then in 1839, finally was complete abolish of slavery, and that was 34 years before United States was able to do the same thing. And it was because of that, because of Texas was part of Mexico back then, and it was because of that that Texas rebelled against Mexico and fights a big war and moves away. So it's always said that it was like, oh, they didn't like taxation without representation. Well, I'm sure there's some of that, but the reality is that Sam Houston, of which the city of Houston, Texas, is named after, he became the president of that nation, because Texas was a nation for almost 10 years, and it was a slave country, and he was always arguing that even the North, when they went into the United States, that they benefited from the cotton industry. So those are some of the things that happened. And then why did it take 10 years for Texas to become part of the United States when the United States was growing, was buying Louisiana, was having wars with Mexico to acquire more land, and it was getting Florida and all that? Why didn't they take just right away Texas? Because it was a slavery, it was a slave owner state, and Washington wanted the whole north they wanted to be slave free, and they didn't want another slave country, slave state, to deal with. And but so for 34 years, Mexico had abolished the slavery, and the United States hasn't got up yet. And so there's a lot of stories about blacks escaping through the borders that escaped slavery from Louisiana, from Texas. They would just run to Mexico, or just capture a horse and run with the horse, or get into a jeep. Or there's so many stories. I mean, so that also precipitated the Civil War that helped the movement of free of slaves. And then, so I don't know if we have a much more time or not. But,
yeah, we have a few questions coming in, so we can get to that if you're good.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Tell me about these questions.
All right. Sure. And if people still have questions, you can still submit them. We still have some time here. So one of the questions is, how do people celebrate Mexican Independence Day, and if it's celebrated in Tampa?
Oh, okay, yes. So the celebrations in Mexico, they're always September 15 at night, at midnight. So in this year happened on Thursday. So not only they take Thursday off, it's a holiday, but the Congress or the politicians in Mexico, they also approve Friday, so you have a long weekend. I mean, so in every little town in Mexico, big and town, or big or small, or in the capital of Mexico, the president of that town or the mayor comes out and then screams the cry of Dolores, and which is being Viva Mexico and Viva the Independence, and then so there's that. And then here in United States, it's always on Sunday because we don't get that holiday, so it always gets moved to Sunday, which is fine because in Mexico, really the whole month is like, it's like here in Christmas. Christmas starts in August. So over there, the independence is the whole month. It's called the Mes Nacional, or the month of Mexico. So we celebrate the whole month. But here it's always on Sunday. But the problem is that every single big town, like Chicago, there's parades and there's big stuff. In Los Angeles, where there's a lot of Mexicans, and then they all grab all the groups, and then all the other little towns don't have it. So here in Tampa, I know Norberto Vallejo, he did finally, because we haven't done a lot of stuff. So he did a Grito de Independencia on Thursday, 15th, with a dance and music and mariachi and all of that. And we are doing a Mexican independence dinner. I'm doing it on Saturday, also because of the same reason, people can take off Thursday to do this party. But so we have a wonderful event. It's an Eventbrite that you can check it out. We're doing events almost every month now, and so this one has got a very special menu, and it's in commemoration of the independence of Mexico here in Tampa.
That's wonderful. Another question is, why do you think it's important for people to learn Mexican history?
Well, first of all, it's of super importance. It took 1.4 million people to die in this war. That's a lot of people who died to gain this independence, and it paved the way. So when this happened, it was perfect timing because France had invaded Spain. Why did that happen? Because they wanted to do the same thing. They wanted to oppress Spain. So that was a good timing. But when Mexico decided to fight the Spaniards, then other countries said, we're also going to do it. So it's not a coincidence that in those 11 years, all of the countries that were under the Spain rule, Colombia and Argentina and Peru, and I mean, every single country had their independence within those, that little range of not even 10 years. And so that is possible. I mean, also because of the influences, that he had across it, like I was talking about, how the freedom of slaves in Mexico helped pave the way also for the United States. So those are some reasons.
I have one person asking, what kind of food menu do you feature in your cooking?
Well, at this point in my career, I'm doing food that is very dear to my heart. And I decided to go the hard route, doing very interesting food with interesting ingredients and interesting techniques. And I decided to go for the more interesting food, the more gourmet, the more obscure ingredients. Like, for example, this event that we're doing with huitlacoche, which is a corn that grows, it's a mushroom that grows only in the corn. And it's purple. Yeah, it's purple, almost blackish. It's got these flavors that are very difficult to describe, but some people describe it as black truffle. But of course, flavors are very difficult to describe. If I try to tell you what the flavor of a mandarin was, and I go to citrus, and I tell you it's a little bit like orange, but not really, and it's a little bit like lime, but not really, but it's a little bit like grapefruit, but not really. You have to try it, but it's somewhere. Yes, but it's not. I can't tell you exactly what it is. You have to taste it. So this mushroom is really interesting. We're doing chicharrón prensado, which is a charcuterie from Mexico. They sell chicharrón. It's a different kind of chicharrón. We're doing grilling, a lot of grilling on my events because I'm from the north. My mom is from Monterrey. My dad is from Sonora. My wife is from Chihuahua. So the whole northern state, all the states are big cattle country and grilling. And, together with Texas, I mean, all that heritage is there. So we do a lot of grilling. And then we are doing smoked ribs, beef ribs that come with Mexican chimichurri. And we're doing a ribeye tacos and then stuff like that. So, yeah.
All right, sounds great. Another food question is someone's a vegan and they're interested in knowing if you also cook vegan food.
Absolutely. We just happen to do vegan stuff because it's just natural. And
Mm-hmm.
it's part of our meals. So like I was talking about the mushroom. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
the first time we're going to do a big event where we're also not pulling any punches. We're doing a vegan event next month in November 15th. It's all the whole 5 courses. And I'm also going to bring this huge custom-made grill to where we're going to be grilling different ingredients. You can see the whole menu at eventbrite.com. And the whole
Mm-hmm.
thing is completely vegan. And the food is just not the usual stuff, so it's very interesting.
It sounds great. Yeah, I'm not vegan, but I'm vegetarian, so definitely up
Ah,
my alley. Yeah.
oh yeah, you gotta come and check it out.
Yeah, definitely. I think we have time for one more question. I want to know what was it like in the town where you grew up in Mexico, and how is it different from where you live now?
Well, I live in different parts of Mexico. So I live in the mountains of Sonora when I was a kid, and so that was very rural. And then so we were play with horses, and we were chasing goats and living the country life. And then we moved from where my mother is from, Monterrey, which is a big city, about the size of Chicago,
Oh, wow.
11 million people. So it's a big, big, big population. There's more people from Monterrey, Mexico, than there is Puerto Ricans, for example. That's just that
Mhm.
big. It's just a big number. And then so it's very urban. It's very, very sophisticated. It's just like any city, like a big city. It's the third largest city in Mexico, but it's also the most industrial. It's about a couple hours from the border. There is a fantastic food, but there's a lot of grilling stuff there. And so Tampa is a city. I love Tampa. It's a smaller city, and it's just completely different style of food. But I also like to bring what I have over there and integrate it and mix it up with southern cooking and make some interesting approaches.
All right, wonderful. All right, so I'm going to go actually now to our contact page. So if you have any questions for the library, you can reach us at 813-273-3652 or on our website at hcplc.org/contact. And Chef René shared a few stories with us today, and we'd like to also hear your stories about your great experience with the library. You can submit these at hcplc.org/stories. If you do have more questions for Chef René or you're interested in reaching out to him, you can contact him at chef_René@icloud.com. And if you enjoyed our program today, we have more programs celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. Now through October 15th, you can look at the full list of events at hcplc.org/Hispanic Heritage. And yep, they'll be running all the way through October 15th, celebrating more events. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and a special thanks to Chef René for sharing us his Mexican history, Mexican heritage. And I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. All right, bye everybody.